All right, folks, tonight we want to have a very big conversation, something that I'm very excited to share with you, to have with you today, which is this conversation about history and racism forcing America to confront her tragic past. And this is a conversation that we have often in bits and pieces, but not taking the time to truly look at what is going on, how there is major efforts right now that are happening across the country where Black people and the history of Black people are under attack. I want to look at this. I pointed out the fact that the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and I want to bring this up, so I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. Here is a man who is the governor of a state. He's a Republican, but I don't care about none of that. I really don't. I'm talking about, because it's not even about labels. I'm talking about the level of ignorance. But he's all in on this anti-critical race theory type of ride. He went so far as to back a bill that would prevent any content that would make students or state employees feel guilt. I'm not lying, folks. To feel guilty about their individual identities. This is what this man is doing. You don't want to disrupt no one's view of themselves. Oh, don't put that out there. But damn it, Governor, we as Black people, we've been dealing with this shit for a long time. And you worrying about the feelings of some state employees because you don't want to really face the reality and the truth. See, and we're going to get to my culture crew members in a moment. I got to say this, man. America is on a decline. And do you know why America is on a decline? And this is not something that I'm excited about. I'm not hooping and hollering because I live here. My family lives here. You live here. But you know why this country is on a decline? Because we can't face the damn truth. I mean, this country just lie, just constantly lie all the way. All the way. It makes me think about, I'm about to take y'all there, but I think we got to go there. It makes me think about the story of Moses and Pharaoh. When Pharaoh didn't want to accept the truth that Moses was preaching, and he had to get into the Red Sea, damn near drowning, before he finally said he submitted, that he believed the truth, that he believed the God of Moses. But look how far it had to go. He damn near had to, he's drowning. And that's like this country. This country gotta be curtailed, as the scriptures say, on all sides before she comes to the reality that she was wrong. And that's a sad place to be, because too many people are going to lose their lives. And when you withhold the truth from anybody, I don't care whether you're Black or white, when you withhold the light of truth from anybody, you're killing them. You're killing them. Your ass don't need to be in public office if you're going to lie to the people about the history. You don't need to be in public office if you're going to lie to the people about their present condition. And then you're going to lie to us about how the future is bright. Bullshit. You can't. The future ain't bright because you lying. You keeping people in the dark the whole time. So this is what Governor DeSantis is doing. Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, the governor there, doing the same damn thing. He went as far as to create a tip line for parents. I'm not making this up, folks. He created a tip line for parents who object to the content being taught in schools. What the hell? We're talking about simple American history. 20 years ago, there was no critical race theory. It is what it is. It's like, this is the history. It is what it is. But you're now creating a tip line for people to complain about learning about the truth? And you're going to tell us. And I'm saying you telling Black people in this country, just go along to get along. Go out here and vote. It's sadness. It's sadness. And we deserve so much better. And for those of us who are seekers of truth, we can't be quiet nowadays. We can't be quiet. I want to bring in my culture crew. I want to bring in writer, educator, host of Queen Talks with Nira podcast. You can hear that on all streaming platforms. My wife, Nira Muhammad. Nira, thank you so much again for joining us. Always good to have you. And we're also joined by my brother. He is an activist. He is an educator. And man, he's rocking and rolling doing the grassroots work in the city of Baltimore and other spaces. Brother Elijah Miles. Brother Elijah, thank you so much, sir, for being a part of the show tonight. Making sure I can hear you. Brother Elijah, I got you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Great. All right. Look, I'm all ramped up, dear. I'm fired up because we at a point right now. It's just an all-out war. It's like an all-out war right now because as much as people say light versus darkness, truth and lies, just the lies right now. The fact that you got people in this country, Niram, that really are saying literally cancel Black history. Like, what is this about?
Let me first start off with this quote by my guy, Dr. King. He says, "Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Conscientious stupidity. First of all, I'm a lover of history. Let's just say that. I love history. I think that a tree without history, we're a tree without roots. I've said that before. So the fact that Black history has been turned into something called critical race theory. First of all, let me just say, as an educator, Black History Month was never about making white people feel bad. Even when I teach about Black History Month, I've never taught from the lens of making white people feel bad. This is about honoring the greats. This is about teaching our babies about the strong Black men and women who have come before them, because unfortunately, because of integration, so much of our history has been watered down and omitted from our educational system. So one of the things that I wanted to share from Carter G. Woodson, who, by the way, I studied urban education, elementary education at Morgan State University. And out of all the theorists that we learned about during education, the only Black theorist that we learned about was Carter G. Woodson. Let me just say that. He is the only theorist that we studied when studying education and theories and all these great philosophies that we learn about to even become an educator. Carter G. Woodson was the only Black person that we studied. Just throwing that out there.
Wow.
And he said, for those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished, lose their inspiration, which comes from teaching biography and history. Who are we if we're not on the backs of our forebears? Who are we without all of the amazing Black men and women who have come before us, who have struggled to get us to where we are today? How dare we not honor them? So you know what? Down in Virginia and all these other states, one, we have to push back. That's some bull crap, that the fact that parents can call in and say, hey, I don't like that my kids are being taught Black history. But let me just say, it's not just Black history. In Virginia, they're also moving to remove Black history. They're removing to anything about the Holocaust. They're removing anything that has to do with the annihilation of the Native people here in this land. So this is not just about Black history. This is about anything that makes white people not look great.
That's crazy.
This is about making white people feel better about themselves. That's all this is. Literally, that's all this is about. And I want to just say, I've had the amazing opportunity to teach white children, to learn with white children. They were fine with learning this stuff. In fact, they wanted to learn this stuff. They didn't feel bad, and I didn't make them feel bad because I had no reason to make those babies feel bad. So that's just bullshit all around.
Absolutely. Elijah, when you see the efforts to cancel Black history, the way that we're seeing it in this country, and this is 2022, Elijah, we're not talking about 1982, we're not talking about 92, we're not talking about 2002 or 2012. 2022, we've had 8 years of a Black president. We got Black folks in leadership roles and from politics to education to arts and entertainment. I mean, across the board. Yet we're talking about canceling just teaching teaching other people in the world about the great contributions that Black people have made in America. You're talking about canceling that level of knowledge to children in schools in this country. All out war to me, brother. What's your take?
It's definitely war. It's definitely war. Neely Fullett said that if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it operates, everything that you think you understand will only confuse you. And so I don't think it's so-called ignorance or stupidity. I think it's a direct assault on Black children. I think it's a direct assault on the minds of not just Black kids, but kids in general. I think it's a direct assault on our identities and the culture, because we know, whether it's psychologists or sociologists, we know that stories lay the basis of how we see ourselves and our identity. So we don't have a who am I or who are we without stories. But if you can control the stories that white people are told, you can control the stories that Black kids know, then you can control how they see themselves. And the issue with that is that when Black kids look at the murder rate in Chicago, or when Black kids look at the drugs in Baltimore or the things in Detroit, where Black kids look at the stuff that they see in their community without the stories, without the history, all you can conclude is, man, we ain't nothing.
Yeah,
we ain't nothing. But every effect has a cause. But if you hide the cause, then all you have as the effect is yourself. And so we look at it and say, man, we ain't nothing. We ain't never going to be nothing. And I agree with you, brother Farajii, that we have to know about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey. And then we also have to know, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, got to put him out there. But we also have to know about Mansa Musa and Mali. We have to know about Timbuktu. We have to know about the University of Sankora. We have to know about Hannibal and Carthage. We have to know about Kemet and Imhotep, the first multi-genius. We have to know about that stuff. Queen Nzinga, Yaa Asantewaa. We have to know about that stuff, because when we know about that stuff, it tells us our potential and our possibilities today. I would say one last thing.
Yeah.
Black kids knew the history and know all of the stuff that we have accomplished as the people. It don't matter the issues in Baltimore City or Chicago or Detroit. We know all of those issues. Wherever Black people are is light work to us. And we have accomplished so much yesterday that today we can get out of this. But without the history, there's no way out, because we've always been like this and we'll always be like this. And God made us inferior like this. It's the same thing they tried to do on the plantation. It's crazy.
Elijah, I was just thinking of what you said. Carter G. Woodson said the education of any people should begin with the people themselves. It should begin with the people themselves. If you look at so many other cultures anywhere around the world, their love for their native home, for their country, that pride, it is that patriotism, it is so strong because they learn about themselves. That love of their culture, their ethnicity, their beliefs, and all that makes their people who they are, that is ingrained in them from infancy. That is taught to them in schools. They read books that reflect who they are. So it is very, very important. And I do agree, this is not just about stupidity. I do believe that it is an attack, but you also have to look at the fact that this is not just attack on the Black community. This is attack on our Native brothers and sisters. This is attack on anyone who's been downtrodden by white supremacy.
No, I would agree with you wholeheartedly there for both of you, because I if we're talking about history, if we can't deal with the fact that Black people were brought over here through the Middle Passage, we can't talk about those things, right? I mean, that's an actual fact. That's not some Hollywood movie script. That's not some story written by somebody that you find in a book. That's actual fact. If we can't talk about the actual fact of a scenario, how the hell are we going to talk about the actual fact of any moment that we are experiencing, any situation that we're experiencing right now? We can't. I mean, that's crazy. It's mind blowing that you got. And I mean, it's not mind blowing that people are attacking us, because I truly believe that there are some people out there, and whether they're in leadership positions or not, they just don't like us. They just hate us. You know what I mean? And I get that. Okay, but I'm just saying, for us to be in a country where we have all of these rights and these freedoms, that we haven't gotten up to the point to fight this attack, not just within our own households, but I mean, communities, neighborhoods, cities, and states, there has to be an attack. And I mean, you're going to keep beating up on the people. Here's the thing, Brother Elijah and Nero, that gets on me. You're going to keep beating up on the people. What do you think the God of justice is going to do with that? I mean, look at America, folks. This is not a joke. Nero, you talked about, look at the condition of the Native American community. Look at the condition of the Latino and our Hispanic brothers and sisters. Look at the condition of Black people. And I mean, look at how oppressed we really are as a result of white supremacy. What do you think the God of justice, the universe that is built on the idea and the principle of fair dealing, which is justice, how do you think that's going to respond? How do you think Mother Nature is going to respond? I mean, this is, and that's why I'm saying this is so serious, because it gets down to the fundamentals and to the root of a human being. You're not even human when you deny people the light of truth and the light of knowledge. You become a savage. When you deny people to know who they are, even the Constitution. And I know people say, well, we can't use this as a basis, but this is where we are, so I'm gonna use this as a reference. But the Constitution, the Bill of Rights even go as far to talk about how you can't prohibit the light of knowledge and truth from citizens. There is a price to pay when you do things like that. And that's what I'm saying, Brother Elijah. There is a real price to pay. And I'm not saying that we're going to be the ones to bring in the revolution. We may be used that way. I don't know. That's whatever the Creator wants us to, the role to play. But I know that there's a price to pay, because the universe is built on truth. The universe is built on justice. The universe is built on equality and freedom. Those are natural laws, immutable truths. There's a price to pay. And that's what I'm saying, Brother Elijah. There's a price to pay. See, people think we can't get into the space of just thinking, oh my gosh, it's just about politics. No, there's a real price to pay, because then you are setting your own children. We may not, Mr. DeSantis, you may not feel the price, the consequences, but your grandchildren will. Your nieces and nephews, those who are coming behind you, Mr. Youngkin, they will. They're going to feel that because of your ignorance and stupidity and because of your savage thinking. Brother Elijah, go ahead, talk to me, brother.
I would say, man, you're right on with all of this stuff. And we do have to fight back any way we can. Because when you control a people's knowledge of history, you control their destiny. Because history is the guidepost to a people's destiny, as Marcus Garvey teaches. So it's a control over destiny. Where we go as a people will be determined by our knowledge of history. And so when you are fighting back against our understanding of history, our very understanding of the world around us and how we got to where we are, and you control white people's understanding of history, then it puts us back in a place where we are going to stay in our situations that we're in right now perpetually, or we just won't have the tools to fight against them that we used yesterday. But when you give him Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and Muhammad Ali and all these great people before you, you say, dang, to be a real man, to be a real woman, Black man or woman is not just to rap or play basketball, but it's to be a part of the progression of my people. And just how they sacrificed for me yesterday, I'm going to honor them by sacrificing in some way, shape, or form to get us forward today. You can't do that. You're not even grounded in real purpose, collective purpose, without an understanding of history. And they're trying to rob us of all of that. And we got to fight back to make sure our kids know who they are and make sure all kids know the history of this country, which we played a big role in creating.
The leverage that the players have is that we cannot be replaced. These are the best basketball players on the planet. The league can't say, okay, you're all fired. We're going to get some more Who's watching that, right? The dance is to make it not worth their while to lock us out. No one's making any money if you try locking these men out. And I said to Adam, I don't mind a fight. That's what I do. Y'all want to lose all this money?
Y'all want to swing?
Right, let's do that. And, there's some things you can say are unacceptable, and I think I can probably believe it. But when I say that there's something unacceptable, you should also believe it. At the end of the day, I know my guys aren't going to make any money if you lock us out, but you know what else? You're not either.
All right, folks, welcome back. We're talking about the big conversation today. Is America headed for a civil war? This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I feel like at this point in our sojourn in this country, and most importantly, in this point of our history, there is a lot of anxiety right now. I mean, even beyond COVID-19, there's a lot of anxiety right now about the state of our democracy, the state of the country. And I think, to kick off this show, even though it's Black History Month, we have to have a conversation about where this country is going, and especially when it comes to Black people in this country. So I'm very excited that we have a chance to have this critical conversation and making sure that we can kind of relieve some anxieties, and most importantly, show where do the Black community stand in this whole situation? Where do we go? How do we move forward if America is headed towards a civil war? I want to share with you very quickly just some statistics because, this conversation is big, folks. But I want to share this with you so that you can get a better understanding of the context. So according to the New York Times, in January of last year, shortly after the storming of the Capitol, there was a poll done by a gentleman by the name of John Zogby, who conducted this national survey that yielded a troubling finding, folks, that a plurality, meaning a number of respondents, 46%, believe that the United States is headed for another civil war. 46%. That's nearly half of the respondents. Now, how did we get here? Let me just share this with you. The political culture and the landscape of our politics is just so divisive at this point. It's embarrassing. We can't get nothing passed. Nobody can do their damn job. It's absolutely embarrassing. But along with the outside of the political divisiveness, that's a major contributor. We don't actually talk about the toll that level of political divisiveness actually has on us as the constituents, as the American citizens. So let me share with you this. According to a 2020 poll from the right-leaning American Enterprise Institute, 64% of Democrats see Republican policies as so misguided that they pose a serious threat to the country. 64%. That's high. Now, let's go forward. Among Republicans, get this, 75% believe that Democratic Party policies are so misguided that they pose a serious threat to the country. 64 and 75%. That's how dissatisfied Republicans and Democrats are with one another. So given these stats, I'm looking at this question and I'm saying, should we be concerned about the prospect of another civil war seriously, or are we just being alarmed unintentionally? Now, according to Barbara Walter, who is a political science professor at the University of California in San Diego, she studies civil war. She actually wrote a book about how civil wars start, said, quote, "No one wants to believe that their beloved democracy is in decline or headed towards civil war. But if you are an analyst in a foreign country looking at events in America, you will go down a checklist assessing each of the conditions that make civil war likely." Check this out. And she said, and what you would find is that the United States, a democracy founded more than two centuries ago, has entered very dangerous territory. Very dangerous territory. I want to turn to my very special guest, Reverend Eric Lee. I want to bring him into this conversation because as much as we're talking about the dangerous territory, as much as we're talking about this, we have to see, like, where do Black people stand on this situation? So I want to bring my brother in. Reverend Eric, Big Brother Eric, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well, Brother Farajii. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. In a few moments, then we're also going to be checking in with our culture crew, Iman Heath and Nira Muhammad, to get their take on this. But Brother Eric, I mean, this is just a small number of stats. Let me just, before we even get into that, I want to share with the audience the work that you've done, because they probably say, well, who is this guy? Why are you having him on the show? Let me just share with you very quickly, folks, who Brother Eric is, because he is a person that I know. He's a friend, but he has been doing work. He was out there in Los Angeles, relocated to Baltimore in 2013. But while he was LA, I want to just share with you why it's important for us to have a conversation. He is really like a son of the civil rights movement. He was a founding member and president of the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance, which is an independent and social activist organization that's dedicated to representing, promoting, and protecting economic interests and well-being of Black communities and Black workers. He was the past president of and CEO of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in Los Angeles. And SCLC, you know, their great fight against oppressive forces that hinder people from freedom, justice, and equality. He is a founding member of the Stand for Security Coalition that organized African-American security officers into a union. He's a part of the Diversity Task Force member, reintegrating African-Americans into the hotel industry. He's a founding member for the Alliance for Equal Opportunity in Education at UC, a collaboration that forced UCLA to create a more inclusive admissions policy. And Brother Eric, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. He's a founding member of the Coalition for Black Student Equity, which is purposed to improve the quality of education for Black students. And so he's been doing this work for over 30 years. I'm not trying to show your age, brother, because you look good. You look good, dear brother. But you have been doing the work. And one of the great things that I appreciate about it is that you are an activist. You are a community organizer. You're not a talking head. You are a person that has been doing the work in various communities, hitting the streets hard. So when we have a conversation of this magnitude talking about, is America headed for civil war? Should we be concerned at this point?
Well, I think the greater, well, let me answer your question. Is America headed to a civil war? Not in the traditional sense of a military engagement, because a civil war would require, from the typical sense, the engagement of a governmental controlled military. Now, if the former president were to be president again, he had often tried to engage the military to do his bidding and his work.
Yeah.
And so I think that the possibility of an actual civil war taking place is greater with someone like the past president in office,
yeah,
than what we have now. Right now, I do believe we're in a very deep cultural war. And it's not just the left against the right, the conservatives against the liberals. It's not, and there's also a race war going on, which has also been inspired by the past president.
Right.
But I think we can also track that back to when President Obama first was elected in 2008, of which I was a delegate at the 2008 convention. But you saw at that point where the vitriol communication regarding racism and race privilege and race oppression and discrimination was accelerated exponentially when
Absolutely.
Barack Obama became president.
Yeah.
And so that cultural war, to me, has always been there. It was at a simmer before Barack Obama, during the I would say the affirmative action years or the civil rights era, 60s, 70s, and 80s, I think the cultural divide was always there, but it was kept under wraps because of the movement of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And after the election of Barack Obama, and then you had our past president or the past president in office, we saw that it came to a crescendo, and it ended up with the January 6th insurrection, which to me was a military style activity. It was a military strategy. It was a military engagement to try and overturn our election. So, so was it is it the possibility of a civil war taking place? Unless the government controlled military is engaged in a contest about principles and culture, then I don't see that as happening in the typical sense of warfare. But there is a cultural battle taking place, and it's not only between the left and the right, because there's a cultural battle taking place in the left on the Democratic side.
Right. The Big Tent Party.
Right, and there's a cultural battle taking place on the right.
Right.
And so you have these sub themes taking place in terms of cultural wars and differences and diversities that we can't seem to wrap our arms around. And it's, a free for all right now in terms of promoting what you believe this country should look like. And it doesn't seem like we're able to rein that in to have some sense of civility in how we dialogue with one another.
Eric, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that that's exactly where we are. I want to bring in members of the culture crew. And again, folks, these are family members and friends and just part of people that I have these conversations with. I mean, I know some of you probably think to yourself, like, you talk about this, I talk about this, we talk about this all the time. It's a very, very real situation. First and foremost, I want to bring in a woman who I have a deep, deep respect for. She is a writer. She is an educator. She is the host of Queen Talks podcast that can be heard. And she's also my wife, the mother of my 2 children. Let's bring in Nira Muhammad. Nira, thank you so much for checking in.
Thank you for having me, as always, Farajii.
Absolutely. And then we also are joined by another dynamic activist who was a very, very important part of the great 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, the Justice or Else Coalition and Organizing Committee. We got Miss Iman Heath. Iman, thank you so much for checking in. Iman, can you hear me? Are you on mute?
There you go. Thank you all for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. So, Nira, when you think about this conversation of being in the place and listening to what Brother Eric had to say about the cultural space that they're in, what comes to your mind?
To be honest, I agree with what Eric said entirely. I don't necessarily see us coming to like pitchforks and like guns and like having a serious like civil war in the way that we, saw back in the day. But I do think that the culture shift is very much so happening. I think that the American people, our constituents, we are not happy. We're not happy with our government. I don't think our government is happy with themselves, which we can clearly see. I remember you showing me an article about all these new parties, like possible parties that could come along. And as I was sitting here listening to Eric, I was thinking like, I don't want to be a Democrat or Republican. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be a liberal either. I want a new party. I do personally think that our country, our government needs to be dismantled, because who is it serving? Who is it protecting? And I do think that our civil liberties are slowly but surely just like dissipating. And I think that it's happening so like at such a small, slow pace that people aren't noticing. People aren't paying attention. So I do think that we are going to be going to some sort of civil war. Again, it may not look like what it did to free slaves or to stay as a union, but I definitely see that shift coming. We didn't think January 6th was going to happen though. So no bets are off.
Right. I feel you on that. Iman, what's your take on this? Because I think Nira is absolutely correct. We didn't see the way that this country has declined the way that it did from the, from you get from Barack Obama, everybody. I mean, like Eric said, people are still like, it was like an undertone. But then you get from Barack to Trump, and it just seems like all hell broke loose, all bets were off. Democracy, what is that? What's your take on that?
It's definitely the Civil War. If we were to go into the Civil War, which I believe we are going to culturally, as you said, I don't think it's going to be, guns and pitchforks and fires ablazing. Hopefully not. We've seen it get there before, but hopefully not. I think that this generation, the younger generation, of course, we're not tolerating certain things moving forward. As Nira said, I don't want to be a part of any political party. Yeah. What we need is something new, brand new, not the same. Let me appeal to your better nature, or let me appeal to you as if I'll stand for you, stand behind you, and it's not that way. Matters such as Black Lives Matter has made a cultural divide. With the
but I mean, it wasn't their fault though. I mean, I know people often say Black Lives Matter shouldn't have been out there the way they were out there, but I mean, somebody had to literally come up with a phrase, and they didn't just come up with it to just assert the fact that, guess what, the lives of Black people do count.
It needed to be said.
Went down.
It needed to be said.
I mean, I don't see much. Go ahead. I don't see much difference. I don't see much difference between the Black Panther Party and Black Lives Matter. I mean, as I was growing up in Oakland, it was about feeding our children, about protecting our civil liberties and our civil rights, and we were operating within the law, which we had the right to carry guns, and I'm sure we're going to talk about guns later on in this program. Mm-hmm. But I don't see much difference in terms of cultural preservation. I see myself as a cultural preservationist, and when there are things that are elements that are attacking our right to exist and our right to excel, then we have to push back in every means possible, in every manner possible. And so I don't see much difference than what we were doing back in the 60s and 70s with the Black Power movement.
But I gotta say, Eric, I can take it back even further than that. I was studying some Gordon Parks photos, and I was stuck on those photos about, I believe they were called the Midtowners in Harlem. It was a gang. And even looking at, and this was in 1948, and looking at the gangs, even back then, they were not created to create chaos. They were protective measures. So even looking back, we've always operated out of a place of protection. Right. Now, have we went off that beating path over the years? Sometimes we have, but I do think, like Eric said, these movements were built out of protecting and preserving the Black community.
Yeah, it's just a problem. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The problem is, the criminalization of everything that Black folks do.
Yep.
So when mainstream society, those who are in positions of privilege and power, want to characterize us as being radical and revolutionary, it's only because they're deflecting from the bigger problem, which is a denial of our equal rights, with denial of justice, and the oppression and discrimination that they've constantly operated in. And so it's to Nira's point, we are protecting our culture and we are protecting ourselves as a people, but we are then criminalized for standing up for our rights.
Let me throw something else out there into it, and then Iman, I want to get your take on this, because there was a piece, an opinion piece that Mr. Frank Brunei, who wrote for the New York Times, he wrote a piece called "Our Tribalism Will Be the Death of Us." And in this piece, Mr. Brunei said, the pandemic, which could and should have brought us together, has instead driven us further apart, exacerbating our tribalism, which is an enemy of real progress, but a friend to all sorts of dysfunction, all manner of meanness. The irrational obstructionism in Congress and lawmakers' taste for vitriol and vengeance are tribalism run amok. Cancel culture, be it the left or right, is a tribal impulse, not merely abetted, but amplified by the technology of our time. And one of the big things that I'm getting from Mr. Brunei's piece is the fact that we are creating our own demise. we are creating our own demise. He further says, we humans are inherently tribal creatures. I get that. I've read and remember enough history and headlines not to be surprised. But the work of civilization, the advance of it, involves containing that tribalism, controlling it, moderating it with grander and more unifying ideals. Why aren't we seeing certain measures, Iman, being put in place that controls this tribalism? How did that happen? Where we're now starting to see not just a Democratic Party, we see 3 parties within a Democratic Party, 3 parties within a Republican Party. Then you got all of these divisions among those who are not affiliated. How come we can't get it together with unifying ideals as Mr. Brunei has recommended here?
I would say one main problem would be acceptance. There's a lot of denial of things as far as if racism still exists, which is something that some people seem to not get past. Let's say back in January of last year, when everyone stormed the Capitol, white supremacists stormed the Capitol. If those were Black people, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have been the same outcome, in my opinion.
Right.
But you have others who want to say, "Oh no, that wouldn't have happened." Someone was hurt, but they had their rights. Their rights were being infringed on. No, you pick and choose when to use that line to say that, "Oh, our rights are being infringed on." I don't think that we will be able to reverse our behavior when it comes to tribalism. I think it's only going to extend.
Let me ask you this, Iman. Let me ask you: Do you think that, given where America is going, that it's in Black people's best interest to start thinking more tribally?
I would say it can, but I want to say the point to the vaccines. That's going to be what really divides us all. You have people pointing the finger at others for not getting their vaccine, and oh, you're a part of the problem, or never get back to how the way of life was because you won't get your vaccine. Then those who aren't vaccinated, you're dumb for getting the vaccine. They're shooting a tester in you, blah 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 blah. And again, I don't agree with getting the vaccine. However, to each his own. But as humans, we're going to gravitate what's familiar to us. And it's no way to go back. In my opinion, it's only going to get further. It's only going to divide us even further.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the show here on the Culture on the Black Star Network. We just want to welcome you back because this show is all about making sure we have these important conversations about the culture that is dictating and determining how we engage, how we govern, how we police one another, how we educate with one another, how we do politics. So this show, this platform here on the Black Star Network is an opportunity for you to hear different insights. That's why we have our culture crew members like Lise Winnie and Iman Heath and many others that you have seen over these past few days since we got the show started. So we hope that you continue to be supportive of the work that we're doing, but most importantly, understanding that this culture needs to be analyzed, that we do need to take time to pause and to reflect and to think through how we're doing things. Otherwise, we will find ourselves in a vicious cycle where there is no ending, no change in sight. And we need to change that immediately. That's the case. This is the same sentiment that we have with this latest case around Amir Locke, a 22-year-old who was killed in his apartment in Minneapolis while just sleeping there. And the police happened to get access to what they call a no-knock warrant, which is a warrant that allows them to move first and ask questions later. And as a part of that, as a result of that no-knock warrant situation, police killed Amir Locke while he was asleep. Now, this is not a new case, especially in Minneapolis, where we also saw this situation with Breonna Taylor, where she was killed as a result of a no-knock warrant that was done, that police had on Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend. And it became a national conversation about the use of this policing tactic. However, even though police departments have vowed to, and especially in Minneapolis, have said, look, we will not use this tactic anymore, guess what just happened? The tactic was used again. Here to give us some insight about this no-knock warrant and if we will ever see an end to this type of policing is Attorney Warren Brown from Baltimore. Attorney Brown, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the conversation today. Attorney Brown, are you on mute? Okay, there you go. Hold on. We still got you. Let me check on it. Let's make sure Attorney Brown is good.
How about now?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, brother. All right, Attorney Brown, let's talk, Mr. Brown, about this situation. I mean, what we saw with Amir Locke, and then now we're still having these conversations about no-knock warrants even after the killing of Breonna Taylor. Why are we still in this place, Mr. Brown?
Well, because the courts have allowed the police to use this tool when it comes to search and seizure. The way it operates is that they've got to go to a judge to get permission to enter into someone's home unless there are exigent circumstances. And in some instances, they ask that they be allowed not to announce their presence, but just to go in, and i.e. the no-knock. There are a couple conditions that have to be met before a judge is legally supposed to authorize no-knock. One is that there's some reasonable suspicion that there's going to be a destruction of evidence, or that to go in after announcing themselves that it might put the officers in danger. And then also that, another possibility is that it might lead to the potential escape of someone that they're looking for inside of whatever residence or that they're entering into.
Mr. Brown,
No, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask though. I mean, it's crazy that this is the same jurisdiction that said that they've moved on, that they've improved their policing strategies as a result of the killing of Breonna Taylor, and then just a little bit over a year or so, or a short period later, we're seeing this tactic still in force. And I'm wondering, it seems like it was just a bunch of BS, a good good sounding words, a good rhetoric to appease the protests that have been happening around the country around police brutality, and we're back at this again.
Right, and that's because in part, the argument of the police is, policy aside, when we go in, we ought to have the advantage. If in the absence of that advantage, our well-being is going to be jeopardized. The problem with the no-knock is what you see, that innocent people oftentimes are victimized and killed. In Maryland, for example, the thought was, well, if we're going to allow no-knock, it's got to be between like 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. The argument being that during that period of time, people are probably going to be up and not be startled to the point of responding in the fashion that most people would respond if they heard the door being kicked in.
Wait a minute, hold on, Mr. Brown. Hold on, wait a minute. I'm not laughing at the situation. I'm laughing at how dumb that sounds, that you try to put hours on when you bust inside somebody's house.
Well, again, the argument being that that's the time when people are more likely to be up and not, not startled to the extent that they would be after hours. For example, when you're asleep and the door is kicked in. I mean, you're not stopping to look for why this is happening. You're going to respond in a fashion that might lead to your death or injury, or the officer's death or injury. So the thinking is, let them do it during the day when people are up, and of course they'll be still startled, but less so they'll be more prepared to adequately deal with the circumstances than if they are, awakened, as a result of someone kicking in their door. But in any case, it poses a danger for everybody, for the people that are there, and quite frankly, for the officers, because you come barging in a lot of people's doors, kicking their door in, they're going to open fire. They'll figure it out later on, but they're not going to sit there and just be victimized because they don't know who it is coming through the door.
Mr. Brown, how do you make sure, or you try to minimize the risk of police who we know have bust down the doors of places and they found it was the wrong address, the wrong person? You know what I mean? They have, oh, this person moved from here. How do you minimize that risk?
Well, yeah, the intelligence, surveillance, something beyond, this is the last known address, and that was registered a year ago. Something beyond that. I mean, there should be, some investigation before you barge into people's homes, although it happens all the time. It really happens. It's interesting. When Kurt Schmoke was the mayor, one of his friends in his neighborhood was the victim of such a no-knock, and it was meant for someone else, and there was a big brouhaha. A couple of officers, as a matter of fact, paid the price for that. But that was high profile. That person had connections. But it is it's a problem, but it's usually based in part on just a rush to judgment, a lack of a thorough investigation, and just the desire to kick in some doors, man. I mean, you have that at times. You got some real cowboys out there who get a thrill out of it.
And Mr. Brown, that's part of the other concern that I have, that, when you think about police officers, you think about your officers that's walking the beat, talking to community, that type of thing. But then when you think about police officers as such as SWAT, you're thinking about Hollywood's version of SWAT. Somebody taking the big, long, the steel pipe, busting down doors, shootouts and all of that. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, there's no way that certain things can be done, certain objectives can be met without that level of violence.
Yeah, well, it probably is and can be. And listen, one of the issues, one of the things that allow a police officer to successfully get a no-knock is to say to the judge, if we knock and announce, that's going to give them time to destroy, the evidence. Now, it just depends on, I think, what the evidence is. If we're talking about this ubiquitous CDS that they might flush down the toilet, it's like, really? I mean, who cares, right? There's going to be some remnants of it. If you've had enough to go to a judge and get a warrant to go into the house, especially a no-knock warrant, you've got some evidence, to build a case. So is it really worth risking anybody's life to kick in a door and in part based on your assertion to the judge in an effort to obtain a warrant, no-knock warrant, that, hey, they might destroy some drugs? I mean, really? I mean, that who cares, quite frankly? I mean, it's not
right.
It's not worth risking anyone's life over
right.
that. And then of course the background of the individual, is it that there's a warrant for failing to appear in court, or or theft of computers? I mean, it just depends. Now, I think gun running, that you argue that, listen, we think there might be guns in there. Then it's a real public safety issue. It's a risk to the officers, and they have a right to be protected. It's a risk to the officers. Then you're talking about something. But a lot of these no-knock are for things that really don't impact significantly on the community in terms of the levels of violence. It's oftentimes it's drugs, and there's always going to be that. It's not worth kicking in somebody's door and risking someone being seriously injured or killed because
right.
you want to catch them before they flush the drugs.
Before we bring it back our cultural crew in, Mr. Brown, I wanted to get your take in terms of, on the legal side, the work that you're doing as an attorney. Is there any momentum? Is there any push to try to really ban this in jurisdictions? Are you finding that there are some jurisdictions that are further along with getting certain tactics like this banned versus others? Is that the case that you're seeing across the country?
Yeah, you're seeing that in some regards, especially on the federal level. They pretty much have done away with that with not all of their police forces. They have a ton of different police, DEA, FBI, and that type of thing. And then in many jurisdictions, they're taking a second look at it. But I mean, listen, the alternative, the customary knock and announce has different variations from, boom, 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 police to police. They didn't answer.
Right.
Let's go.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. Some years back when Pat Jessamine was, I wish I could remember the guy's name. Pat Jessamine was prosecutor. It was up near Chinquapin High School. Chinquapin Middle School. They said they knocked. But only thing my client, he was in the basement, heard was a front door being kicked in, and he grabbed his gun, ran upstairs, and turned the corner and started shooting and hit 4 officers. And originally they charged him, of course, with attempted murder and all that. Then when it came out that the officers did not knock and announce when they were required to, they just kicked in the door. The charges were completely dismissed against this guy. And I told him, I said, man, you're the only person I know in America that shot 4 police officers and didn't go to prison and lived to tell
didn't go to prison.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
it is. I want to bring back and I mean, what else can you do? You have to.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm not.
Right.
Let's bring back our culture crew members, Lise Winnie, who is the host of Millennial Anonymous podcast, and Iman Heath, activist and entrepreneur. Iman, what's your question for Mr. Warren Brown, Attorney Brown?
You're
on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being here. So my question is, do you think by increasing the time period for surveillance to receive a warrant, do you think increasing that time period will make a difference? Or even after a warrant being granted, do you think increasing surveillance even after that will help?
The time period of increasing the warrant will make a difference. We're going to check back in with Iman to make sure her technicals. But does that, and I think that's a great question, Mr. Brown, like when we're talking about the time period of the warrant and everything.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, some careful scrutiny, investigation that will allow everybody to be, safer than they ordinarily would be if it's just run to the commissioner or the magistrate or the judge and get the warrant and then just go kick somebody's door in. Some surveillance, some efforts to lure people out. Something beyond just this John Wayne, RoboCop kind of kicking the door mentality.
Right.
But, let's use our brain. Let's connive a little bit and see if we can't get in or get them out, or at least put ourselves in a position where we're comfortable that it is not as dangerous as it would be if we hadn't exercised some of those, those efforts.
Absolutely. Lise, what's your question for Attorney Brown?
So I believe they said that some of the details around the officers who were able to get the warrant are sealed. Is there a particular reason why they would have that information be sealed, and why, or would we find out how they got the no-knock warrant?
Yeah, and oftentimes warrants are sealed because it's a part of an investigation. And so if that affidavit is available to whoever is arrested, it may also detail information that was given to the judge. The judge read the affidavit and says, okay, I'm gonna give you this no-knock warrant. And it may compromise investigations that are ongoing. That's generally why the affidavits are sealed. Not so much the warrant, but the affidavit that the judge used to determine, okay, I'm gonna let you all go into this place for one, and I'm gonna let you go in without knocking and announcing. Now in Maryland, for example, you got 30 days, and then that affidavit has to be revealed. Unless the government goes back before the judge and says, listen, we're still involved in this investigation, and to release this affidavit is going to compromise our investigation. So it's generally meant for that purpose, to protect the investigation that's ongoing.
And Mr. Brown, when we talk about, in the particular case of Amir Locke having a gun, like the justification was the fact that he owned a gun, or he had a gun in pretty much in his area, but he was a legal owner.
Right. Yeah, it's a sad situation,
and so,
because yeah, I mean, it's a sad situation. I mean, he was legitimate in his every action. You know, he had a gun. It was not on the street, so he didn't have to have a carry permit. And in many states, it doesn't even have to be licensed to you. It's just so if you meet otherwise eligibility requirements, you can have a gun in your house or your business, and you don't have to have a license to carry it. So he was justified in what he was doing in his situation. When the cops come in, I don't know. I haven't seen it, frame by frame. They do see a gun. They see a gun, they're going to react, they're going to shoot. That's the bottom line. They're going to shoot. And there are those who argue that, that's a legitimate exercise of police powers, because you don't know whether that gun's getting ready to be turned on you. Now, I think they're trying to argue that one of the officers was in, jeopardy of potentially being shot. And then the others are saying, no, that gun was pointed down to the floor. But just pulling that gun. I mean, listen, he could have pulled his phone from out of from under that blanket, and he was shot.
My God!
Right. So there's no question about that. So
and I think that's the big part about this whole thing, is that regardless of what the scenario is, and it's so unfortunate. He was 22 years old, but it's unfortunate just because they came into his house and he had no options. He was going to suffer by one of their bullets regardless.
Yeah.
They came into his home.
I haven't read up on it much. I don't know what they were looking for, who they were looking for, whether it was, a drug dealer, or whether it was somebody had a murder warrant out on them, whether it was somebody that was easily classified as being dangerous, whether it was somebody that was not so dangerous. It's just that there was a warrant out on them for, larceny or theft or whatever it might have been. But in any case, I just think that, is it really all that important? And, could they have accomplished their intended goal without going through exercising these efforts that they did? Was there opportunity for these people to get out of there? If not, then we know they got to come out the front door. All right. So we don't have to worry about them escaping. Possibly before going in, turn the water off. Turn the water off so they can't flush anything out. And if there are windows, you have other officers outside so that, whatever's thrown out, they can retrieve it. And then so you're not worried about destruction of evidence. You're not worried about escape. And so really just comes down to our safety. But, again, if there's no exit, they got to come through the front. Then I think it's reasonable to say, listen, if we knock and announce and let them know we're here and see how they want to carry it, then that's probably the more prudent path to take, as opposed to just kicking in the door. And but some of them live for that, man. I mean, that's what really gets that adrenaline rush for them. Some of them live.
Oh yeah.
Just kicking in the door. Yeah, absolutely. And usually, and Mr. Brown, usually it's in minority communities this poor minorities communities that this happens. They're not going to go up in the upper middle class and with a warrant. They're not even going to seek a knock, no knock warrant. And but that's where it happens, because they just see us as being a threat, period. And so when it comes to a search warrant on our premises, it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to initially seek a no-knock.
And Mr. Brown, my final question to you is, now that we're at this place, what legal course can the family of Amir Locke or anyone that's been victimized in this situation, in a situation like this? We saw with Breonna Taylor, it took a long time to get to that verdict. But what legal recourse does the family have? Does victims have in this?
Well, if I'm correct, I think the Attorney General out there is a brother who was once in Congress. So I think the Attorney General's office is going to take a close look at this. Now, from a civil point of view, I think it's really going to probably center around the training of these people. Not so much, a malicious intent on the part of this officer to just kill somebody, because again, the gun is displayed. It's reasonable for anybody who is on the other end of that to feel some apprehension. Like I said, if it had been a phone, then they might have more difficulties, but they still would have shot him. But they may have more difficulties in a civil matter. Criminally, from a point of view of suing, I think it's going to really come down to a matter of training and making sure they cross their T's and dot their I's. We don't know what was in that affidavit. We don't know if the judge, was given correct information, and whether if it was incorrect, whether it was intentionally incorrect. And so some of those are things that they will, take a deep dive and try to develop answers for too.
Absolutely. Attorney Warren Brown, Mr. Brown, thank you so much, sir, for being a part of the conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh boy. All right, folks, it's time for Trends, Post, and Doing the Most. Who's doing the most? Tandy Newton. She's doing the most right now. If you remember Tandy Newton, she was in the show Westworld, and she went and did an interview with NPR. And the 49-year-old actress said in this interview, as she is promoting her new film, God's Country, she explained how she related to her character, citing feelings of prejudice in the industry. She said these words, folks. She said, "I now realize that my internalized prejudices were stopping me from feeling like I could play this role. When it's precisely that prejudice that I've received, doesn't matter that it's from African-American women more than anyone else. It doesn't matter. I've received prejudice. Anyone who's received prejudice feels this character." Well, what has gotten her in hot water is the fact that she apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm the one chosen." She said that to dark-skinned actresses. She said, "I'm sorry, I'm the one chosen. I'm sorry that the industry always puts me out front. I'm sorry that I am the one." She went further on to say, she said, "I wanted so desperately to apologize everybody to darker-skinned actresses to say I'm sorry." She said, "My mom looks like you." She's British. She said, "It's been very painful to have women that look like my mom feel like I'm not representing them, that I'm taking from them, taking their men, taking their work, taking their truth. But I do think that any woman of color, whether they're pale or whatever, they've managed to help other actors get into this business. We matter." Whenever they say that Black women who've watched a movie and it really, really, really matters to them, I just thank God that my light skin didn't stop that from happening, that it didn't cause more pain. Let me go to Nero.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because when I think of Black actresses, she wouldn't come to mind at all.
I'm trying to remember, other than Westworld, I watch Westworld.
I mean, I've seen her in a couple of things. She's not like a Black act. Like, for me, I would have thought of Viola Davis. I would have thought of Regina King. And they're all dark skinned. I'm like, shoot, like, where does she come up in the list? I'm gonna Sanaa Lathan, Nia Long. I mean, right. If you want to go to a biracial actress, Halle Berry is the first one that I would have thought of. I mean, she's just not an actress that's on my radar for her to make this statement. I don't think she's on a lot of people's radar. I definitely don't see her as getting like those big roles, those breakout roles, whether it's in film or TV. I mean, personally, I don't even like Westworld. I tried to watch it, couldn't get into it. Tandy, whatever her name, have a seat. But you know who is doing the most, Farajii? I just had Nelly.
We're not talking about that situation. We're not talking about Nelly. And then the short man complex. Elijah. But colorism. I mean, I see that, and I've noticed that, and this is a whole different show. This could really be a big show. But colorism in terms among Black women is very, very real. We know it. we're in a time where light skin and dark skin are at odds with one another again. You know, we see it on social media. We see it amplified on social media. But when a lighter skinned woman says, "I'm sorry, I'm the one chosen," it feels it doesn't feel like an apology, bro.
It's willful blindness. I don't see because I don't want to see. But colorism has a long history in the Black community, and I think any of the people that benefit from it or experience the negative side of it, mostly women, mostly Black women, they know it's the truth. We all know it's the truth. We see the music videos, we see the TV shows, we know the truth. And so the thing is, I think it's willful blindness on her part. I don't want to see because I don't want to see. She knows she's had advantages and privileges and things like that, and she doesn't want to look at that because she don't want to look at that. So it's sad to hear her say that.
I mean, by her bringing this issue up, it only amplifies the conversation. Like whatever dark-skinned friends she had now before this comment, she may not have them after this comment.
No, that's hilarious, Farajii. But I will say people don't think of it from the flip side though. So I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm a lighter skin, but I'm also I'm like somewhere on the spectrum in the middle. But I grew up in a family that had a lot of darker skinned women. And honestly, I grew up hating my skin. I grew up wishing that I was darker because all of my family always was like, "Oh, you think you're cute because you're light skinned," or "Oh, you think you're all that because you have curly hair," or, you know, so it goes both ways. I will have to say that I definitely did not like my curly hair and my lighter skin growing up. I wanted darker hair. I mean, I wanted darker skin. I wanted thicker hair because that's what was around me. And I was made fun of for having lighter hair. I also have a girlfriend of mine who's dark skinned who said that she grew up being made fun of for being dark skinned. So again, we're all going through the same issues here. Whether you're on the lighter spectrum or the darker spectrum, we're all being made fun of by people who are like Black. At the end of the day, we're still Black. I should not have had to deal with so much self-hate because of other Black women, in which I did. It wasn't Black men that made me hate myself. It was Black women. So I would have to agree with that. I still deal with that. I still deal with Black women who make me feel less than, who have hurt my self-esteem. I have not had that issue with Black men as much.
Wow. Oh, she was also, Sonia, thank you so much for checking in. Sonia said, Farajii, she was in the Tyler Perry movie, Good Deeds. I forgot that she was in that movie.
Who watches Tyler Perry movies?
Stop it. Tyler Perry, we love you, sir. Thank you.
I'm just joking, Tyler. I'm just joking.
Every time we have this segment, I have to say this it's a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of fun. Because people really doing the most. All right, so
I can only imagine.
Let me tell y'all something. All right, so this story, this dude is he's one of hip hop's greatest MCs. But sometimes this dude does the most. He does the most. Apparently, the Toronto-born rapper Drizzy Champagne Poppy Drake. He's not just emotional on wax, folks. He gets emotional in real life. Okay. Apparently, once the news came out, I'm sorry. This guy was really in his feelings. Once news came out that A$AP Rocky and Rihanna were having a baby, Rashad, Drake unfollowed them both.
As if he didn't have a baby first.
Right,
as if they've been together in recent years. Like, bro, she's been over you for years. Let it go.
I'm like, is she being petty or is she protecting his energy? Either way, it's still funny. It's still funny. Like you said, you already dropped the bomb, and you ain't dropped the bomb yourself. Your rival rapper had to drop your bomb.
This dude came out in a minute there. He really unfollowed them, man. Like he got in his feelings.
I don't want to see them happy.
I don't want to see them happy.
I don't want to see them winning.
This little pregnancy.
This is crazy. Like, so apparently he unfollowed them, and it was just like it was picked up, and people are just like, well, why he unfollowed? Like, first and foremost, bro, you and ASAP. Okay, we know you had a little situation, a little crush, a little thing for Rihanna. I get it. Okay, I get it.
Take a number.
Facts. Let me tell you the couple that kind of reminds me of Rihanna and ASAP. And I don't know why this couple comes to mind, and I could be way off on this. Jermaine Dupri and Janet Jackson.
I can see it. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like for me, well, like when I first heard of Jermaine Dupri and Janet Jackson, I was thinking to myself, like, what? How you say? Right? Like, what? How did that happen?
I didn't get those vibes from ASAP and Rihanna because ASAP Rocky is fine as hell. I'm not surprised at all that she wanted him.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just saying, the black women have spoken. I'm speaking for black women. ASAP is fine. I'm not surprised. Okay. Once I saw him on that, I've been thought he was fine, but once I saw him on that Calvin Klein ad, I was like,
oh my gosh. But you are a Drake fan as well too, Jay.
Huge. But he's been emotional, and I don't like it. Drake, nobody is. Listen, your problem is that you pick Instagram models, and that's why you can't have a fulfilling relationship. Get off of Instagram, have a real conversation with a real woman so that you can stop putting hot sauce in condoms. Okay? I'm not mad at him for doing it because the fact that she actually tried to use the condom proved his point of why he had to do it. But it speaks to the type of women that you're dealing with. Right. Yes, Rihanna's a boss. Yes, Rihanna's the type of woman that he needs in his life, but he keeps going after Instagram models, and that's why his dating life is trash. Man up, Aubrey. Get you a real woman, man, so you can be happy too.
But I think though it also speaks to the culture that we find, like, and so with social media, and I've experienced this a little bit, but like when you unfollow somebody on social media, that's a very real thing. That's like a whole thing. Rashad, have you ever like unfollowed somebody?
Yeah, no, I had to unfollow a few things, like people. I had to unfollow a few trends, but I did that not out of like pettiness. I was protecting my energy. That's why
protecting my energy.
Is he being, because it's a choice. At this point, it's a choice. Like all social media don't got a leadership button. So we literally tap and decide what we want to follow. So if I'm gonna follow you, it better be something that's going to service me or entertain me. Him watching his old women fall in love and build their own family, I'm sure it's not entertaining, and I'm sure it's not nothing that makes him feel whole as a man. He already know he's like the MC walking male diary, right? So when I turn on I know he's going to express my emotions to somebody else.
How long has it been since the two of them have even been together? Like, bro,
it's been eons. It's been
Thank you. Like the fact that you're even following her, like, did you not want her to move on? Did you not want her to be happy? Did you not I feel like if you ever loved me and you know that you didn't do right by me, let me be happy. Don't be mad that I moved on and I'm happy now. You're a man.
But no, but I think that part about, you showing your disapproval, like, oh, I disapprove of you, so therefore I unfollow you.
Hate.
You know what I mean? It's just like, bruh, like you just can't see
as the woman, I'd be like, oh, he still want it. That's all it's gonna do for her. Oh, but I already knew that. You're not doing anything, making yourself look desperate. Sad.
Wow. Well, you know what, and I think that, and we can have a much larger conversation because I think it warrants this, that social media etiquettes, and most importantly, like when you meet people on social media, or when you connect with people on social media. Like the platform becomes this other thing. It's not just connection. It becomes like you weaponize a platform that was supposed to bring people together. Now you're like, I'm going to unfollow you. Take that.
And what he could have done so that he wouldn't have to deal with this fallout of us talking about it is just simply muted them. When you mute someone, you're still technically following them, but you don't see their posts. You can choose to mute their stories. I guess it's so that people aren't like, oh, you unfollow me, that awkward conversation. Because we don't get that DM like normal people. Normal people, we send you a DM. Oh, so you unfollow me?
First thing, how does I'm gonna be honest with you folks. Like, you can follow me on my social media. If a person unfollows me, if they unfollow me, I don't know if I would even notice.
Because you don't have an app, Farajii. There's an app that you get, and it tells you. There's an app for the app, okay?
There's an app for that. Okay. I get it. So you gotta get the app to see the people unfollow
Listen,
you.
Farajii, you can watch people's stories and
See, that's too much.
They don't
That's
gotta
too
know.
much. Yo, that's
I
too
had
much.
no
yo.
idea. I learned something new today.
No, bro. Let me tell you, Rashad, this is social media queen. But let me tell you something. That's too much. It's too much. Like, seriously, because I don't want to go through the emotional turmoil and stress of like, oh, who is this person? Man, why they unfollow me? What did I do to them, man? That
like, oh, you
sucks.
unfollow me?
Nobody got time for that, man. They got that nobody got that no time for that, Otis. Come on, man.
Back to time again. I ain't got time.
I don't have time.
I ain't got time to give my energy towards that. But I'm thinking, like, did he do that so he had to put out a public statement? Because once they went public,
what's the public statement for?
Like, is he in agreement with it? Do he favor it? I guess that was just his way of like, if I unfollow all my millions of followers, see that I unfollow.
So corny. Drake, it's just it gave us another. Drake just wanted his name in the headlines. He just wanted.
Let me just tell you, this is the same guy, and correct me.
He wanted to be talked about.
Dear, correct me if I'm wrong about this. This is the same guy that moved into the neighborhood, I think, of his rival, his hip hop rival. I think it was Kanye West. Oh yeah, I think so. You know, they kind of like moved into the neighborhood. I mean, he does.
You know what? They probably besties on the low. They probably are.
They are besties on the low. But my point is,
I don't have time.
My point is, when he was battling Pusha T in that little beef that they had, right? I mean, he literally put $100,000 out to find dirt on this other hip hop artist. It's like, bro, you're doing the most, bro.
Farajii, they didn't go through manhood training. They not FOIs. They didn't go through manhood training.
Right. You're doing too much, bro. You're doing way too much.
Look how long it took him to do music with Chris Brown, and they had to actually do a battle in the video to symbolize their rivalry.
And he got destroyed.
A whole gang beef in the video.
He got destroyed, man. It was one of the best videos though for hip hop. That was a funny video.
It was.
Tonight, though, I do want to get into the conversation about Brian Flores. Now, this was the NFL head coach of the Miami Dolphins, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, that decided that, he was fired. He attempted to go to other teams, did not get picked up. Even though he was only with the Miami Dolphins in a smaller period of time, he decided to file a lawsuit against 3 teams within the NFL. And it has caused a furor of people of just wanting to know, well, why is it taking this? Why is he doing this? And what does he plan to get out of this situation? And all of those things. So, today we're going to have a discussion with a retired Miami sports journalist, Mr. Tony Segredo, to give us some insight of what's going on down in Miami. And does this situation, this latest lawsuit, and some would say this latest gut punch to the NFL when it comes to its race relations, will it really put a dent in what we're seeing as the behemoth structure of the National Football League? So I want to bring Tony into the discussion. Also, we're going to be joined by Elijah Miles, who serves as the founder of the Tendea family. He's going to be joining us in a moment. But Tony, let's bring you into this discussion. Tony, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Farajii. Thank you so much, and honored to be with you today. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the culture took a gut punch last night and through the day today, and I'm not sure how long it's going to take to recover from it, because it was a stunning accusation or accusations by Brian Flores. Stunning to the point where you felt like you had to read it 2 or 3 times to make sure you read it properly.
Right. And essentially, Mr. Flores was saying that it was about race. It was about discrimination.
Yeah, well, I can understand where he's coming from, and the situation, just to sort of set it up, he was being interviewed for the New York Giants job, and inadvertently, Bill Belichick, the head coach of the New England Patriots, who Brian used to coach for, Bill Belichick sent Brian a text which was meant for Brian Daboll, another former assistant of Belichick's, who was the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills. And the text read, "Congratulations on getting the Giants job." And Brian Flores wasn't quite sure where this is coming from, and after some investigating on his own, realized that this text was meant for Brian Daboll, and that his interview was basically just, you know, smoke and mirrors, or in his words, a sham. So he went in there. He was, interestingly enough, and again, he was asked this morning on the CBS Morning News about how he felt going into that interview, knowing good and well that Brian Daboll had already been given the job or had already been selected for the job. And he said the range of emotions, you know, went from anger to frustration to sadness to unbelief. He just went through this range of emotions, and I can't even imagine him having to go through that. So it's going to be a very interesting time, I think, Farajii, for the NFL, how the NFL handles this. You know, there's so much more to this story, and probably somewhere in the middle lies the truth. But regardless of the middle, the way I always look at these things is, if this is really what happened, what an absolute travesty.
Yeah.
And if this isn't what happened, what an absolute travesty, because it's out there now. But my one addendum to all of that, and again, I wasn't in any of the rooms.
Yeah.
But from what I know about Brian Flores, it's hard to believe that he would make something up like that. I just from everything I've known about him and have heard about him, and from the people I've spoken with who have been with him in a very close encounter, it's hard to believe that he would come up with something like that, because you shake your head going, how in the world could that happen?
Yeah. So, okay, a couple of things come to my mind about this situation, Tony, that I think that we need to kind of highlight. One is the fact that Brian Flores, he was hired back in 2019 by the Miami Dolphins. He was fired January 10th of this year. With his 2 seasons that he was with the Dolphins, he really took the Dolphins out of a slump. He was 10-6. They were 10-6 in 2020. They were 9-8 in 2021. Prior to that, they really didn't have a winning season since 2003. So what would be the basis for the firing of him as a coach, considering that there are other coaches who have been in place who might go 3 and 4 seasons without really making any gains, but they stick around. What was the reason from the Dolphins' point of view?
Well, before I get to the actual reason, the reason that was used, I do want to mention that record you talked about for Brian Flores, he did that record with a very subpar roster and a very subpar quarterback. I mean, he really pulled a rabbit out of his hat to win these games, and he did it in a way that, you know, he's a tough, hard-nosed, rigid, disciplinarian type of head coach, and what he did was, quite frankly, remarkable with the roster he had. Now, right. the official term of the firing came from something to the effect of we couldn't collaborate well with Brian. There wasn't collaboration with Brian. Now, there's another accusation that Brian threw out there, and again, this is an alleged accusation, that allegedly this happened. And you know how the NFL works, Farajii, and for those who maybe don't, the teams that have the worst record get the first or second or third choice when it comes to getting college talent in the draft.
Right.
So according to this accusation that Brian made a couple of years ago, or a year ago, Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, at the time the Dolphins were really struggling, and he offered Brian Flores $100,000 for every game that he lost.
So wait, hold on, Tony. Wait a minute, Tony.
Yeah, if you want me to repeat that, I would be more than happy to repeat it.
Please repeat it, because that sounds like you're getting rewarded to lose.
Well, exactly, and you're getting, there's a whole, Brian, we could be doing this until June. there's this whole consternation also on why should teams that perform poorly get awarded when teams that work their butts off to do well suffer, right? And it's all about the haves and the have-nots, and we can do that at another time. Yeah. But basically, when they were losing and they were having a tough season, and there was a quarterback that everybody wanted, the allegedly, again, the accusation is that Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, offered Brian $100,000 for every game that he lost. Basically, the insinuation here is that, you know, losing the games is not so bad. Maybe we can tank some of these games. Maybe we can, you know, put ourselves in a position to get this number one quarterback that we all want. Now, mind you, I also need to point this out. And I don't think, and I can be pretty well assured of this, that the players had no idea of this. When a player steps foot on the field, he is all about competition. If for nothing else, for himself, to better his stock within the league. He is not going out there thinking, I'm going to, you know, play it, you know, halfway here. However, a head coach has the ability to move players in and out in certain situations where they may not have the best players in a certain situation, and they wind up losing the game. So that's why, again, according to the accusation and the alleged offer that came from Stephen Ross was, you get $100,000 for every game that you lose.
And that's hey, Tony, I want to make sure that we're clear for our watchers and listeners. You get $100,000. That's in his personal pocket. That's not like a coaching staff team. That's
that's in his pocket. That's just for him. Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
And so
I'm wondering. Farajii, can I interrupt you for a minute?
Sure, go ahead.
That's more than just a wow. That is, you have got to be kidding me. And then you can add wows in all capital letters followed by about 100 exclamation points.
Right. Like first, Tony, and I'm not throwing any shade on your experience, but you've been around, you've been reporting on sports and you've been doing sports journalism for years. Have you ever heard of something like that?
No, the only thing I've heard of, Sean Payton got penalized for this, the former coach of the New Orleans Saints. I have heard bounties that
I remember
players
that scandal.
were offered bounties. And now there's always been this sort of crooked eye look that teams that were struggling, teams that only had won one game or had won no games or whatever, that their last 5 games, I wonder if they're going to cash it in. I wonder if they're going to tank so they can get that number one pick. There's always been this sort of, you know, pall over teams. You know, what are they going to do? And my pushback always was, again, the player. You know, the player's not going to go out there, because the first time you don't compete at a high level, that's the time you put yourself in the position to get seriously injured. And your career could be over. So I always sort of push back on that. But again, if the coach is involved, that's a whole different ballgame. So I have never, I've been doing this for well over 40 years now, Farajii. I've heard of the bounties, and we saw the result of that. And I'm sure that, you know, there's part of things. I've heard about incentives in contracts, but the incentives have always been for something positive. How many catches you've made, how many touchdowns do you have, how many tackles have you made, etc. We go down the list. But in this case, I have never heard anything quite like this before. And that's why it's so shocking. And again, we need to continue to press home that these are accusations, that this allegedly happened. Again, but the other side of you goes, is this, how can you even make this up?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where in your wildest fantasy, could you make this up?
Good job, good pay, good life. Would you be willing to walk away from it to achieve real wealth? Well, that's exactly what this woman did, And boy, did it pay off.
Once you make the decision that this is the direction that you're going to go in, I do believe that there's power in having a decided heart.
Hear her story on The Next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, on Black Star Network.
Folks, we've been talking about the attack on voting rights in America. There have been a number of states that have been victims of suppressive attacks, like the state of Washington, where they found that mail ballots were being thrown out, especially mail ballots from Black voters were thrown out at a rate 4 times higher than white voters. And now it leaves us to ask the question, what is the future of the vote in this country? What is going to be the impact of our vote in this election cycle this year? We've been joined by Marvin Doc Cheatham, former president of the Baltimore chapter of the NAACP and SCLC, and he continues to do the work of advocating for equal voting rights. Now we're also joined by my culture crew members, Shaquaya McKenzie and Bakari Jones, to share their thoughts as well. I want to bring in my culture crew here on this one. Shaquaya, you know, when you're listening to Doc, and Doc is saying, look, you got all of these states that have voter suppression laws. You know, Brother Roland has often talked about how impactful this situation really is, how severe it really is. And when you start looking at the whole idea that people's ballots are being thrown out in one state, or they're not being counted in another state, or that polling places, like, for example, there have been a number of pieces and articles that have said that polling places have become further out for certain members of Black and brown communities, so that permits them from voting. What do you say is the future of the vote and democracy at this point? Do we need to keep saying go out to vote, or does there be something else to activate our people to understand that our voice is being taken away and diminished every step of the way?
Well, Farajii, the truth is that the minority of this country, which is the Republican Party, is diminishing in front of their eyes, and the levers of power that they hold. This is all of these actions, all of these restrictive voter laws are of consequence of them realizing that their minority is in fact ironclad, and they're doing everything they can to maintain control. They're also depending on the distractedness of what they consider the liberal bloc or the Democratic bloc. And they're doing everything they can, in a sense, through the strict voter ID laws, the cuts to early voting, voter roll purges, in a sense, and in a hurried sense, to try to do everything they can in the last bit of power with this upcoming congressional and the local elections we have this year, in order to determine the outcome of the presidential election. This is all of consequence of the big lie that we know, that the Trump administration and his I don't want to say minions, but his counterparts in the Congress.
We can say minions. Let's say it. Let's call it for what it is.
And so
he's despicable me's. He got a bunch of minions on him.
And so the what is incumbent upon the Democratic voting bloc, which is starting at the top, the Biden administration, and which leads down to the bottom in terms of grassroots organization, is to one, on the administration's side, they need to go to Arizona. They need to go to West Virginia. Let's be clear. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are the ones who are holding up or have held up the legislation that would defeat these voter restrictions across the country. And therefore, there is this threat. I'm not sure what is happening in behind closed doors in the Biden administration, but their campaigns, there need to be more active campaigns in educating the voting blocs of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema around the the harm that they're doing to this country, not relevant just to their community and their constituents, but to the entire country. There needs to be a more proactive lens to talk about what's happening and to address what's happening in a way that moves the ball. Because let's be clear, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin haven't moved because of their corporate ties, right? And so there needs to be a more proactive offense to the people who are actually holding up progress. On the grassroots level, there needs to be more education campaigns. You know, what was so effective, and we as a community of activists and or people who are involved in community organizing, we kind of opine about the glory days of Obama and why that was so successful, right? In terms of being able to transform the Democratic Party, where more young people and of different diverse demographics were more involved. It was about the grassroots level, about door-to-door canvassing. I know we're in the pandemic, so door-to-door may not be door-to-door, right? Maybe Zoom call to Zoom call. But there needs to be a more proactive edge of education, interaction, really meeting people where they are, especially the younger generation, and getting people involved in what's going on, not just talking around it on media channels, because I think that's what's happening. It's living in a bubble of people who are already concerned about it, who are already doing the work. We need to meet those who are not informed or who are not necessarily paying as much attention and bring them into the fold.
No, I think that you're absolutely right. And Bakari, you know, thinking about that, one of my big concerns about, you know, just where we are with this whole situation is that people will not get engaged. People will not come out to vote. You know, the suppression tactics will turn off the next generation of voters, right? Especially coming from the Black community, the brown community, and other, you know, marginalized communities. So you know, I think that to add to Shaquaya's point, there needs to be education, but then I feel like we're always on the defense. I feel like we're kind of protecting ourselves from the attack versus attacking. And I'm wondering, when do we start to attack? Because at this point, we just getting our ass kicked right now politically.
I'm inclined to agree, Farajii.
You're inclined to agree.
I think one of the things that ties together both Doc and Shakoya's points are, I think Doc brings the historical context, and I think Shakoya mentioned, you know, the education. I feel like combining those two things together to create a media campaign that shows the history of these Voting Rights Act violations, I feel like will be something that will be incredibly powerful to show that it's not brand new. This is just the newest attempt, right, at stopping folks from voting. So that's something, at least for me, that I would like to see, because it kind of puts it in context. Once you see that, oh, okay, this is literally just the 2022 version of these same attempts, then I think that folks are really able to kind of take a step back and see the writing that's on the wall and understand the actual game that's being played. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and Doc, that's the thing about the games that are being played. I mean, and which is crazy considering the fact that we know that there are games being played. I mean, people are writing about the fact that Republicans in particular have implemented these strategies to keep people from voting so that way they can win elections. My question is, why haven't we seen that same sort of blatant effort coming from the Democratic side? I mean, yes, we can call it out all day. We can be like, oh, voter suppression. Or we can talk about, you know, the fact that these ballot boxes are being picked up and these mail-in ballots are being thrown away. We could say that. But I'm talking about some real action. And maybe I'm asking for too much about this, Doc, but why aren't we seeing that same level of urgency from the other side?
But let me first say this. I am so impressed with the three of y'all. I'm clear that our future looks bright because I can sit back and get back in my rocking chair because you three are expressing everything that I even thought about expressing. But I would say this, we keep playing chess and the game is checkers and chess and backgammon. It's all the game. we got to look at the fact that they're throwing everything at us that they can. And we keep being reactive rather than proactive. One of the things that we need to do, not only keep nominating this great woman, these great women that should have been on the Supreme Court years ago. But here's a chess move. We need 2 more people on the Supreme Court. Biden and the vice president got to move to put 2 more people on the Supreme Court. Otherwise, we're going to be playing chess, and we're really playing Chinese checkers, because if we allow Supreme Court to turn back the hands of time in voting and change the voting laws again, we're going to be basically trying to count marbles in the jar, or how many bubbles are in the jar, because voting rights will have gone backwards. And I'm just saying, our future looks bright with the 3 of y'all and all the hundreds and thousands of young folks we have. And I'm just saying, let us old folks shut up, be quiet, and let you young folks do what you got to do, because we're in a fight, and some of us ain't got the punch we used to have.
Right. Oh wait, I can reframe that. I can rephrase that. Some of us don't have the testicular fortitude. I mean, seriously, guys. Like as much as we talk about politics and all of that, there's a level of politics that's just absolutely abhorrent, to the point where you're just like, I don't want to deal with it. But what I do hate watching is injustice. And what I do hate watching is that we have such a deep hope and belief, and I'm saying we as a people, as Black people, regardless of which community you may come from, we as Black people, we have a lot of hope in the American system that we are a part of, that the American system will automatically change based on the benevolence of any white person, or based upon the benevolence of some magic person, some person that's coming to save us. And that's not the case. That's not the case. And that's one of the big things that I hope that many people understand, that if this country is going to change, the country is going to change because we as the constituents and the citizens have said that we're going to change, not because of leadership is going to change. Shaquay, am I wrong in thinking that?
No, you're not wrong at all. And to touch on a point and connect it to what Doc has just said, I think a large reason or consideration to what do you call respectability politics that happens on the congressional level, and oftentimes also on the state and local level, is a reflection of leaders who have been in place for too long. And when I say too long, I don't mean by the means of not being able to, because we can regard and revere people who have dedicated themselves to service and who feel they are rightly positioned and have the insightful authority to know how to guide us in modern times. But things have changed so rapidly in the past 10 years with the advancement of technology, with the diminishing public interest in politics, that I think there oftentimes, when you think of our Nancy Pelosi's, and I'm just using her as an example, but people who have been in political positions for a long time, they don't have the concentric understanding to know how to connect to the electoral bloc they need that is going to sustain the Democratic Party and the American democracy at large. I think that there is hesitancy for them to remove themselves to allow younger leaders to take charge and to lead conversations about where we need to go, because they're concerned. And I'm going to be very clear as a student of history, when you think about the Democratic Party, the party of slavery, there has been so much muddying over the years about what their priorities are and how to separate from corporate interests and how to really stand in the block of what it is that it's become over the past 50 years. Right. I think that there is hesitancy, as you mentioned, from the younger generations to trust the government, which is ironically the very propaganda that's being used to fuel conservative and right-wing arms in the actions they're taking at local and state levels to suppress individuals and to suppress the vote. Is the paranoia, is the skepticism of the American government and how it best serves us. The benevolence of the government, as you regard it, Farajii, is not in the forefront of the minds of the younger generation. that are underneath us. Millennials certainly have a level of skepticism. Our hope opines on the Obama generation, right? Knowing that we can at least see ourselves in position of control. But the older generation, the baby boomers, if you will, they have to learn how to move out of the way. They have to know when to let us move in and guide the conversation, because we are the way forward. And the tactics that they're used to, it's just not going to work. You know, I as a student of history, I think about what happened after slavery when we had the largest African American electorate representation in the Congress, right? And since then had not, because the very same tactics that are being recycled now were implemented then to ensure that we wouldn't have that authority and that power again. And so, to Bakari's point, we have to educate. We have to create more education media campaigns that can paint the picture bright and clear so people can understand where we are in the timeline of American history and how we don't have to repeat the history, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Shaquay, a couple of folks have chimed in on the remarks you just made. My guy, Epic Change, who watching via YouTube, said, look, right, Shaquay, but in a way that is normal. Older folks have always been hesitant to let younger people take over until they were sure they knew what they were doing.
Right.
Janae checking and say, younger folks play a role, but if you don't know nothing, then how does that benefit us in these conversations? Term limits. Yeah, it's called voting. You can vote them out. I think that is the belief that younger people don't know, and then therefore, Bakari, you know, we need to stay under people. But the voting suppression situation is deeper. This is about power. This is about resources. And you know, in a moment, Doc, I want you to share your thoughts about the recent gerrymandering and redistricting efforts that are happening across the country. But Bakari, when we talk about those things of power, resources, and staying in power, or keeping people out of power, then that becomes a declaration of war. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if people understand that when you are in wartime, it calls for warlike strategies and tactics. This is not regular time. This is not just any old election. Look, let me just share this with you real quick, and then, Bakari, I'm going to let you say your share. The Republican Party, look at this, folks. It just came across the wire a little bit before we started today. The Republican Party censored their own party members, Liz Cheney and another GOP member, for being on the House panel to investigate the January 6th situation.
Adam Kinzinger,
thank you. The Republican Party just censored their own party about a demonstration that clearly was quote unquote undemocratic, a demonstration that clearly showed that this democracy, this American experiment is not working or is falling apart, especially for white Americans. And they get mad and they censure their own party for seeking the truth. See, that's what I'm saying. See, we trying to appeal to the morality of a joker. We trying to get them to understand us. They're not even thinking rationally enough to be like, this is good, this is not good. This is a lie, this is the truth. You mean to tell me a whole party is allowed to censure their own party members for seeking the truth, yet you want us to believe that you are the party of the rule of law. You are the party that worries about the Constitution. You are the party that stands on the side of right. How the hell is that possible? Bakari, what's your take?
Farajii, I feel like that was a little bit of a setup.
That is a setup. That's an alley-oop right there. You know how it go.
But I mean, I think to think about, you know, everything that you just said, right? Everything that's at stake. You're talking about power. You're talking about resources. You're talking about access to resources. And I think, you know, putting it into context that we are at war, I think that, you know, what we see as a strategy and as a tactic historically for generations on generations is this attempt at absolute and total fatigue. You know, I think that, you know, my understanding, and Doc, please chime in, But I feel like my understanding when it comes to the voting rights acts violations is like, we're going to just exhaust you. We're going to make it so difficult. And so, we're going to just keep moving the target until you just give up on trying to hit it at all. So I think that, it's like, they're just multiple battles that we're up against. So I think everything that you said is absolutely right, Farajii. And I think to your earlier point is, what does it look like for us to be on the offensive? And I think part of that is creating campaigns about what has worked in the past and what's possible, and challenging people and creating more of like a call to action and a call for folks to chime in. The work that I do is not as directly related to voting rights, so I don't feel like I have the utmost authority to speak in that space. But I do know that creativity and adding vitality to all of our movements and creating spaces that become more attractive and compel our folks to engage is what a lot of, I think, that the guiding principle in the work that all four of us do. So
absolutely, Doc. I mean, what I'm seeing from the Republican Party is not a party that you can just deal with on the basis of trying to reach across the aisle. I'm not seeing that type of party. I'm not seeing a group of people who you can really have a negotiation with, you know what I mean, or a real conversation. Because this action, just this recent action that came out today, is just a sign to me that no, y'all not even thinking logical. Y'all not even thinking rationally. You rather destroy your own country than to admit to the truth. You rather go down in a ball of flames in a lie than to admit to the truth that you're wrong.
Is that not what the Civil War was about?
That's the nature of white supremacy, right? It can't help itself. It can't help itself. So it's doomed to essentially self-destruct, right? We know that, across all of these spaces, whether it's voting, technology, which we spoke about earlier today, environmental justice, on all of these fronts, we are in spaces that we just really can't sustain anymore. So it's like a lot of these systems are crumbling before their eyes. And I think Shakoya kind of spoke to this before, the projections that we see for what this country will look like is becoming more and more melanated. So of course, I think that just understanding the space and time that we live in, that we're fortunate enough to be in 2022, and what the next years and years are going to come to, that come to pass will look like. We see a lot of folks that are living in fear and scarcity and wanting to uphold these walls that are bound to come tumbling down. And I think it's important to know that, as Doc said, that, we're seeing an uptick in terms of the violations. And that just means that folks are holding on even tighter and not wanting to let go until, as they say, the fat lady actually sings. So.
And Doc, what's your take on that, Doc?
Well, I may shake this up a little bit.
Shake it up, brother. Shake it up.
I've been voting since 71. And I would say this. I think neither party deserves African Americans to be in their party. I think we have been used and abused, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray. I think this recent non-movement on the 2 voting rights laws is one of the greatest insults ever. I think it's time we need to politically strategize in such a way and say to hell with the Democrats and the Republicans. It's time we did our own thing, voted what's in our best interest, and right now neither one are in our best interest.
Doc, that means a lot coming from a man like you, because we've known each other for years based on the work we've done in Baltimore, but that says a lot when you're at that point. I never thought that I would see you be at that point, to be honest, brother.
I never thought I would be there myself.
But you being a voting rights specialist, an advocate, you have always had, kept people's hope alive, so to speak, in this system to get involved. For you to get to a point to say, we might have to think about something else at this point.
Let me give you one quick example. Here in Baltimore City, we're Democrats, African Americans are in the majority, but we are allowing ourselves to have voting sites where the largest area that has African Americans is considered to be the Western District. We got blacks and whites, Democrats and Republicans on the election board. We have gone 10 years when the largest populated area does not have an early voting site. If that's not voter suppression, I don't know what is. And neither party wants to address the issue. And we elected some old folks and some young folks. Neither one want to address the injustices that are taking place right in front of our eyes. And I'm saying, if the Democrats aren't going to help us, Republicans are going to help us, kick both of them to the curb. Let's do our own thing.
Shaquille?
I think it that Doc's point is very important, and I've long thought that we needed I've long thought that we needed to follow in the steps of Fannie Lou Hamer, those who at different points in history made an attempt to create a separate voting party for disenfranchised communities. This is not restrictive to African American communities. This includes other communities of color who have been shut out of the Democratic and Republican parties for long. And I think that there could be that take. Of course, some people may consider that a more radical position to consider. How do you actually unyoke those with fiscal in terms of people of color, those who are tied fiscally to the Democratic and Republican Party? How do we pull them out from that to even create such an entity? But I would compliment what Doc has said by saying that we know the real power when it comes to political power boils down to money, right? We know that campaigns are reflective of corporate and wealth interests. And I think there needs to be more strategic. I don't think this, I know this. I know we're gonna have to take a break in a little bit, but if we have time when we come back, I'd love to talk about what I was able to observe and understand as I became involved in some political lobbying groups adjacent to both the Democratic and Republican Party as a student leader at Morgan State University, and what I was able to truly understand conduct grassroots organizing. You see, Republicans don't start with their voters, they start with their children. There are systems and pipelines in place to condition the identity, the organizing methods about how you prepare people for political position or political involvement. And we do not have those strategic pipelines in the Democratic Party. I think whether we create a party of our own or we, continue to try to influence the Democratic Party to work on our behalf, there just needs to be more institutional advancement of Black leadership and Black money in how we operate in politics.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Look, I got to take a quick pause when we come back. Panel, I want y'all to just stay with us just for the final few moments because I feel like there's one more element, and Shaquille, you hit the nail right on the head. There's that part, Doc, that we got to talk about just for a few minutes at least to give our people just something to hold on to for the weekend till we come back on Monday. But we need to talk about that part of Black leadership involved in this. It's not radical thought. When you are in a war, they say it's all's well in war, or, pretty much anything goes in war, and it is not anything goes. But when you're talking about fighting for your survival, when any animal is confronted and is backed into a corner, no living organism just crowds itself and says, come on with my ass. No, you fight for your life. And in America, Black people, we have to fight for our lives. We say that Black lives matter, but we got to fight to let the country know that we are serious about our about saving each other. We got to fight for our lives, whether it's in education, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in politics. We have to fight like hell for our lives. And if we don't, guess what's going to happen? We'll die, because nobody's going to fight for us. No one is coming to save us. It's either us or it's none. That's what it comes down to. And if we have allies, if we have partners, if we have folks from the other communities that want to join on, that is all well and good. But they have to have the same level of urgency that we have, that if you don't fight all the way to the end, if you don't fight as hard as we do, if you don't fight with the same intensity and passion, if you don't fight with the spirit that you're not just fighting for yourself, but you're fighting for your children, then your allyship, your partnership, it ain't worth nothing.